What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, here with the very first edition of a brand new content series for us in 2023. We're going to be offering some insight into how to attack Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em and Draft Fantasy Sports contests this year. So keep an eye out for some website tools and more videos here on the channel throughout the year for Underdog Fantasy contests. Best ball season's around the corner for 2023, so get excited. We're going to have a lot more for the 2023 NFL season this summer than we've ever had before. But first things first, big game between the NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles and AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs. If you're new to Underdog and you'd like to follow along, use the promo code below and you can receive a 100% deposit match up to $100 to get started with playing some of their contests today. First up, Underdog has a special stat that they are offering on Jalen Hurts for this game of 0.5 yards. So we obviously think that he's going to have higher than 0.5 yards. He's had more than 0.5 yards in every single game that he has been active for the Philadelphia Eagles this season. So I think that is the easiest way to enter Jalen Hurts into a pick'em lineup here with Underdog for the game this weekend. Now, looking at some of the other things that are available here, because if you're going to play a portfolio of pick'em lineups through Underdog, you can only use this special stat once. I think my favorite way to play Jalen Hurts here is probably lower than 10.5 rushing attempts. I have him projected for about 6.5 in my own rankings for this game. The Eagles should have roughly 28 rush attempts based off of what they've done all season long, what the Chiefs have allowed all season long, and Hurts averages about 23% of team rush attempts on the year. That puts him at around 6.5. So I think comfortably lower than 10.5 rush attempts is another way to play Jalen Hurts in the big game this weekend. That's enough on Jalen Hurts. Now, the other quarterback in this game that everybody is aware of is Patrick Mahomes. Third Super Bowl in 4 years for Mahomes, going for his second victory. And my favorite way to play Mahomes in a pick'em lineup this year is actually lower than 39.5 passing attempts. We have seen the Eagles hold quarterbacks to lower than 39.5 pass attempts in 14 of their 19 games this year. And not only that, the Chiefs themselves average about 38 pass attempts per game. The Chiefs allow roughly 32 pass attempts per game as a defense. So the median outcome here for Patrick Mahomes, I think, is about 35.5 pass attempts, which is comfortably lower than the 39.5 that is being offered here by Underdog. Another way I think that you can play Patrick Mahomes in a lineup is to go higher than 0.5 interceptions. The Eagles have generated a turnover in all but 2 games this season. Going back to Jalen Hurts, I do think this is a game where the Eagles are going to have to succeed through the air. The Kansas City Chiefs were the 20th ranked DVOA pass defense on the season by Football Outsiders, which means that it is an easier matchup for Jalen Hurts in the passing game. If I think he's going to have lower than 10.5 rush attempts, then obviously he's going to be throwing a little bit more, and that means his receivers are going to see a little bit more action in this game, and that means that we probably want to look at some of the stats that are available for his favorite weapons, and what better place to go next than with his number 1 wide receiver, A.J. Brown. Brown is actually going to be the only underperforming wide receiver available for us to consider in this game. If you've followed some of our DFS advice all season long, you know that we like to look at the underperforming wide receivers. These are players that have seen a ton of targets, a ton of air yards, a ton of opportunities to produce fantasy points, but haven't necessarily been able to do so in recent weeks. Players like A.J. Brown that are in this type of situation are regression targets, so we're expecting them to violently swing back above their averages, and we can leverage that by looking at some of the higher stat lines here that are available. The Philadelphia Eagles have targeted A.J. Brown 22 times in their last 3 games. He has just 11 receptions for 145 yards and no touchdowns. I think in this particular game, Brown is going to have a ton of targets. He's got a 29.1% target share in Philadelphia's last 3 games. That puts him in line for just under 10 targets, according to my projections here, which means I think he's going to have 6 receptions, 102 yards in the median outcome, which is comfortably higher on both of these stat lines that are available. So at those projections, higher than 72.5 receiving yards is comfortably my favorite play for A.J. Brown in this game. If the passing game is going to thrive for Jalen Hurts, I do think the number 1 receiver is the best way for that to happen. The Kansas City Chiefs were the 31st defense defending wide receiver ones this year, according to DVOA data. So A.J. Brown, slight lean over Devontae Smith for me. based off of not only being an underperforming wide receiver, but the matchup here as well. My next favorite target in the passing game for Jalen Hurts in this game is the tight end, Dallas Goedert. The Kansas City Chiefs were a slightly below average defense defending tight ends in the passing game this year. We've seen Goddard go right back into his clear role as the third option in this passing attack for the Eagles. He has just under a 23% target share in the 3 games that he has been back in the lineup for the Eagles. So at that number, I think Goddard is good for just under 8 targets. Puts him in line for roughly 6 receptions, 80 receiving yards, and a 50% chance at scoring a touchdown in this game. That means I'm comfortably in favor of going higher than 48.5 receiving yards for Dallas Goedert in this game, but I also like higher than 5 receptions and comfortably higher than 9.95 fantasy points in this game. Now, if the Eagles are going to attack the Chiefs through the air, then that means we're going to see less overall opportunities for rushes for the Eagles players. And so my next favorite way to enter someone into a pick'em fantasy lineup here through Underdog is to take Miles Sanders and go lower than 13.5 rush attempts. Miles Sanders has played 40% or less of offensive snaps in 4 straight games now for the Eagles. Pretty good sign that this is somewhat of a committee backfield at this stage for Nick Sirianni and the Eagles offense, which means even though Sanders is probably in line to do some things for the Eagles here in this game, I don't know if the raw total touches for him are going to be there. So I'm going lower than 13.5 rush attempts for Miles Sanders in this game. This is my favorite way to play a 5-player lineup for a potential 20x with Underdog here in this game this weekend using the promo, which you can only use once. This gives us a chance to use our max entry of $20 to turn this into $400. And this is my favorite way to do that. My favorite way to play a portfolio of pick'em lineups is to take these 5 statistics here and put them in some different combinations together. So if you're not using the special, you can do something like lower on the passing attempts for Mahomes and then higher on the receiving yards for A.J. Brown and play some of these 2 statistic lineup combinations and have a little bit more safety here, only relying on a couple of different outcomes to be correct here through Underdog. Really excited for this weekend's big game between the Eagles and the Chiefs, and we know that you are as well. Thank you for checking out this video. If you liked this, please give us a thumbs up on the video. It lets us know that you want to see more content relative to Underdog Fantasy here in 2023, and we're excited to offer that for you for the full slate of offerings that Underdog has. Keep an eye out the rest of this spring for some NBA content, for some Major League Baseball content when that gets fired up, and of course, some way too early 2023 NFL draft lineups. Can't wait to get started doing that with you all. Good luck this weekend with any of the ways that you're playing some fantasy contests for the big game, and we will talk to you soon.